Hey gang, Sally here. Hope you're having an amazing and fascinating day. I know I am. Hey, look behind me this way. There we go. I'm actually in a campground. I'm in a campground at Assateague Island State Park in Maryland. Uh, we had to change sites yesterday, so we went down to Chincoteague in Virginia. I've been checking out all the wild horses. It's been amazing. In fact, Kit started barking this morning at like 6:15, 6:30, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I looked out my window and there was a horse standing right by my window. So how cool was that? But today I wanted to take the time to talk to you a little bit about something I've been in conversation with people around the campground over the past couple of days, which is how do you choose the right RV? So we're going to talk about all those things. But first, as always, thank you so much for watching my videos. I really appreciate you taking the time, your time, to do that. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. If you think you are, double check to make sure. As we know, YouTube spontaneously unsubscribes people for no apparent reason. And, leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, do all the stuff. That would be really awesome. Here comes the intro, and then we're going to get right into this. Welcome back. Okay, so let's start with what are the possible choices, right? So it could be something as small as a car, a minivan, or an SUV. That's an option. And a lot of people do that and do a tent. It could be, and by the way, we're focusing primarily on female solo travelers in this video because, hey, that's what I am. And it's what I'm most familiar with. But there will be some stuff here that's appropriate for the guys as well, in terms of how do you make the choice, right? The least impact on budget and environment and the easiest to maneuver and all of those things. And from there, you could go to, a trailer. You could do a pop-up trailer. You could do a bumper pull trailer. You could do a fifth wheel trailer. You could go to a Class B van, which probably comes before trailers in terms of, ease of maneuverability. You could go with a Class C, which is what I have. You could go with a Class A. You could get a Unimog. That would be stinking cool. I really would like to have a Unimog. You could buy some other vehicle and build it out. You could get a box van and turn that into an RV. You could get a schoolie. You could get, you could get a short bus. You could get a long bus. You could get a medium-sized bus and turn that into your own recreational vehicle. And in fact, before I bought this rig a year ago, I gave some serious consideration to building out a schoolie. I mean, I'm still intrigued by the idea, and I was looking at building out a box van. Ultimately, what I decided was because I no longer have the strength or the physical skills to be able to do most of that work on myself, by myself, I decided that was going to be like a way too expensive way for me to go personally. But it might not be for you. Might be a good choice. So let's talk about some of the considerations when you're choosing what you want to use for your solo travel life. And the considerations are different than they are for a couple, for sure. So some of the considerations include how maneuverable is the vehicle. And this is one of the issues I had before I went full time. I had a travel trailer and a pickup truck. And I loved that combination. It was absolutely awesome because one of the big advantages of having a trailer is having a separate vehicle that you can drive around once you get to a location. Pretty cool. Do I miss that with having a Class C? I do a little bit, but not that much, and we'll talk about why. But the downside to having the truck and the trailer for me as a solo traveler was that if I hadn't scoped something out ahead of time and I saw a sign that looked interesting, it's like, oh, wonder if I can park. Wonder if I can turn around. Now, if I were traveling with somebody, they could potentially get their phone out, Google real quick, look at the satellite view, and figure out whether or not it looked like I could turn around or park. But I can't do all that while I'm actually driving past the sign that I'm not going to be able to check out. So that's one of the considerations. And for me, it became a bigger and a bigger deal. Another consideration for me, and it may or may not be for you, is, safety. So what do we mean? What do we mean by that? If you have a living unit like a trailer, that's separate from your tow vehicle, like a pickup truck or a larger SUV or a van. I've got a friend that tows her bumper pull with a Ford Transit van. And actually, she's kind of got the best of both worlds in that circumstance because she can actually stay in her van. You know, she can use that for like a shorter exploratory trip. She wants to park the trailer someplace for a week or two or whatever, and then she can use the van and go out for, overnight trips or a couple of night trips because she's got the ability to be able to do that. And that is kind of a cool setup. um but one of my considerations when I decided to get rid of my trailer and go to a class C is that eventually just the very act of hitching and unhitching, I was concerned would become difficult. So that's definitely something to think about. So what about, and all of these things are kind of true with pop-ups and, bumper pull trailers and fifth wheels. You got to hitch, you got to unhitch. Yeah, you get the benefit of having a separate vehicle that you can drive for exploration. And I think it also depends on what your camping style is, right? Are you someone that wants to move every day and go out and explore things every day? Or are you someone like me who prefers to be able to stay in one place for a week or two at a time without having to move? That's my preference. Hard to do on the East Coast, though, without spending a lot of money on campgrounds and RV parks. Um, so when you think about it from that aspect, it definitely does have an impact on what is going to be the best camping unit for you. So from the standpoint of a pop-up, I actually had a pop-up. I had a pop-up when I was a couple, not a solo. And out in the middle of nowhere, the thing that always occurred to me was, basically I'm in a tent. I'm up off the ground, but I'm in a tent. What's going to keep a bear from ripping apart a tent, right? So I was always a little bit concerned about that. So for me personally, not a choice as a solo. I just wouldn't do it. And I wanted to love the idea of a B van. And B vans have a lot of advantage. So when I say a B van, what's that mean? Well, those are in body size, just the regular cargo van appearance, and they can either be self-built, you do it yourself, or they can be something that you purchased pre-made by a manufacturer, like a Winnebago Travada or Storyteller Overland, if you've got a lot of money, because they're very cool. And there are also companies that will do kits for finishing the interior of your van as well. So there's lots of different choices there, and for many people, they are an excellent choice. I've got a lot of friends that live in vans. For me, it's not a good choice. When I was looking for my first Class C, I actually started off looking for a B. And the difference between a Class C and a Class B, for those that don't know, is the Class B is just a regular van, just, no extensions, no bump outs, none of that stuff, just a van. And a Class C may or may not have a slide out room like mine does, may or may not have a bed over the cab, which can either be a place to sleep or, as most people end up using it solo, a place to store a lot of stuff. Um, and again, I don't have a bed over the cab. I've got my entertainment center is up there, and I prefer it that way. Yes, I get a little bit less storage than I otherwise would, but it makes the place feel much more open to me than having a bed over the cab does. So that's my choice. But I wanted a Class B. I mean, I'd seen all the advertisements, I'd watched a lot of the videos before I ever went full time, and I went to the RV show in Pomona, California one year, a number of years back now, and I went in almost every Class B that they had on display. And what I discovered was Class B was not for me. I tried all kinds of different layouts, and in every single one, I was trying to imagine myself living, and at that point, I would have been living on vacation, right? Not even just not living full time as I do now, but living in a Class B for a week or two or three at a time. And I couldn't see it. Now, I do have an issue with claustrophobia. It's not terrible, but as I would sit in each of those vans, and I would sit in them for, pretty fair amount of time, and imagine myself actually performing life's daily functions, cooking, using the bathroom, all that stuff. I just didn't feel comfortable. And so if you've got a touch claustrophobia and you're thinking about a B van, I would strongly suggest you check that out very, very carefully in terms of how it really feels before you get committed to it. And don't tell yourself, oh, I'll spend the majority of my time outside, so it'll be fine, because the weather's not always fine. So keep that in mind. Don't talk yourself into thinking that something's going to be okay that may very well not be okay. I was very fortunate that I was able to figure it out. Okay, what do you see? You see puppies. You do. I know. You see the puppies. Oh, good job. Good job. Look at those puppies. Look at them. So that was how I was able to rule out a B van. Would I ever do a trailer again? I don't know. I mean, I might consider doing a trailer in the way that my friend does by having a van that would be an alternative sleeping choice. Because then I wouldn't have to be hitching and unhitching every day if I wanted to go out. So for me, I might consider doing a van with a trailer. Probably not. I mean, I'm really very, very happy with my Class C, but it suits my lifestyle. Now, considerations in interior living, I think, are really important as well. And I guess one thing that I would say is get the smallest unit that you can feel comfortable in. And I my first motorhome was a 25-foot Class C on a Mercedes chassis, and I didn't like it for several different reasons. One was, and see, this is some of the stuff you learn after you've lived with something for a while, or you can watch this video and learn it now so that you don't have to repeat my mistakes for yourself. That would be my advice. But I had a couple of issues with it. And one of the issues that I had was that it had a slide out, which is actually in the same position that this one is, relative to the front of the vehicle. But the way that it was designed, it had a much smaller walking area, even when the slide was out, between the sort of recliners. They didn't have any footrests. Um, between the two recliners, and had a fainting couch, which I thought was going to be an awesome place to lounge. It was actually very uncomfortable and pretty useless. So just a bad arrangement all the way around as far as I was concerned. But the real deal was you could not deploy the Murphy bed, which was behind the recliners, unless the slide was out. Oh, and the other bad thing about it, see this beautiful window behind me? I love this window. Because the Murphy bed was behind there in that rig, I only had a window at night. So it felt not dark, but less bright and airy than I would have preferred. Um, so those are a couple of considerations. The other issue, when I bought it, I had no intention of being full time, so don't make that mistake. And I thought it was going to be fine for just, vacationing for a week or two at a time, and it really was. But the other thing that happened, even when I was in a position when I could put the slide out so that I could deploy the bed, and if I couldn't, there was no place else to sleep. I mean, that was it. I had to be able to put the slide out to sleep, and that was a bad move. But even when I was able to do that, especially after I went full time, just the very fact that I had to, you know, put the bed. So here's the deal: you got to put the recliners out, lay them out flat electrically, and then you have to electrically deploy the bed over the top of them. And then when you get up in the morning, you got to pull the bed up, and then you got to put the recliners up in order to be able to have a place to sleep. And on the one hand, you say, oh, we'll just leave it all out. Well, you can't if you're driving, because you have to have the bed up and the recliners fully upright in order to be able to pull the slide in and have enough room for it to come in. So it just so that just turned out to be a bad design for me. As for me, might work okay for you, but if you're thinking full time, not so much. So those are some of the things to consider. How functional is the space? One of the things that I absolutely love about Henry, and I think Henry is a 2017 Phoenix Cruiser model 2552, and the model numbers always just crack me up because it doesn't seem to be any relationship to what this actually is. Um, this rig is 27 feet 10 inches long. It's 3 feet longer than the Mercedes chassis was, but with that, I have a dedicated bedroom. And that's become more important than I realized for a number of different reasons. One is I don't have to make the bed every day, so that's really awesome. The other is, and this is a twin bed setup. So the opposite side bed, which is on the driver's side, is the one that I don't use. It's a little bit shorter. And recently I actually got rid of the mattress and I decided to turn it into storage because there's never enough storage. Never enough storage. So this system works out really, really well because in addition to the fact that I've got a completely dedicated bedroom, which I can close off from the living room, and I usually do that in the evening when once the nights start getting cold, I'll bring Kid into the bedroom with his bed on the floor and close the door. It's an accordion pleated fabric door, but it actually does block much of the cold. Close the door between the bedroom and the living room. So those are some of the reasons that I really like a Class C and the one that I have in particular. So in addition to all the bedroom considerations, one of the considerations with this particular model for me, and this became really clear to me after living with the Mercedes Sprinter chassis for so long, is that everything works with the slide in on this RV. So if the slide is in, I still have a sofa. If the slide is in, I can still see the TV up at the front. If the slide is in, I still have the full use of the kitchen and the refrigerator and so forth. So I've got a place to sit. I can still work. I can still set my table up and work even if the slide is in. I can still sleep because the bedroom's behind the living room if the slide is in. I can do all the things. Everything functions. And that, I believe, is really important. Slides are among the most problematic things in any RV. They're the things that people have the most difficulty with. So if you've got one that, it's nice that you can have the slide out because I get all kinds of extra room and I really appreciate that. And I can do things like yoga. I can use my VR headset and go fishing and bowling. I do all kinds of stuff on there because I've got plenty of room to be able to do that with the slide out. But I can still live perfectly well with the slide in if that's what has to happen. For example, if it's going to be raining overnight and I know I'm moving the next day, I'll pull the slide in before I go to bed. So, because here's the thing, and I actually talked to the manufacturer about this because I didn't understand it, so this might help you too. I have a slide topper over my slide, and what I didn't realize is that that's basically just to keep debris off of the slide. It does not keep rainwater from getting in underneath of the slide topper. So when I would leave the slide out in the rain and then I'd pull it in and start driving, I'd end up with water on the floor. And for a while I thought I had a leak, and then I realized what was happening. And when I talked to the manufacturer, they said, nope, that's perfectly normal. Fifth wheels. Fifth wheels are actually easier to tow than bumper poles because of the way the fifth wheel goes into the back of the pickup truck, the way that they steer, and all of those things. I think they're harder to hook up. And we didn't even talk about truck campers. We'll talk about those too. I think fifth wheels are harder to hook up because if you miss your aim, you're screwing up your truck bed pretty significantly. But I've never tried to hook up a fifth wheel, so I don't really know how true that is. It's just a thought that always goes through my mind. And let's talk about truck campers. Truck campers are in some ways an awesome, awesome idea. But like a Class C, basically you don't have a vehicle to drive around. A lot of RV parks and some campgrounds will not allow you to offload your truck camper and just drive your truck away and leave your camper in your site. You have to keep your camper attached to your truck. So it kind of defeats the purpose of being able to separate the two. So there's that. And much like a fifth wheel, same thing. If and actually even worse, I think, if your aim is not really good, it is possible to really screw up your truck bed if you miss and hit your camper when you're trying to load your camper up. Plus, they're very heavy, they're very tall, so they're very top heavy. So you have even more height considerations than I do, which is another thing that I love about Henry. As RVs go, his roof line is pretty low. We're only 10 feet 1 inches high. So that's pretty cool. But with a truck camper, and again, with a truck camper, it's kind of like having a trailer because you can't get from the truck into the camper. You have to get out of your truck, walk around, get into your camper. So same thing, if something's going on, you really have to get out of your camper, walk back around to your truck. Although with some of them, there's a small pass through that'll go like into the sliding rear window on a pickup truck. I guess if you're small enough, you might be able to skinny through that way and get in your truck and drive away. So again, for me, just not a great option. Truck campers tend to be kind of on the expensive side too, because they're packing a lot of technology in a small space. A couple of other considerations, especially for solo females. And again, I'm sharing my experience with you. The manufacturer of my rig goes on at length about how big and deep and cushy the driver's and passenger seats are. And that's absolutely true. They're big and they're deep and they're cushy. And guess what? They're way too big for me. In fact, the distance from the front of the seat to the back of the seat, the area that you'd be sitting in, hits the back of my knees enough that it was very, very uncomfortable. So I ended up having to I've got a big lumbar pillow, and I also now have a gel cushion that I sit on, because I seem to have developed sciatica in the past few months. But I have to do that in order to be able to change my position on the big, deep, comfy seat to be able to reach the pedals effectively. Yeah, because I'm short. I'm five. Well, I used to be 5'5". I think I'm about 5'3.5", maybe 5'4" at this point because I've shrunk. And so it's just something to consider. Now, it may be that, like me, you'll end up making some accommodations to be able to make it work. And so think about that too. I mean, if you have a driver's position that doesn't seem appropriate, think about what you can do to make it appropriate if everything else seems to be a good choice in that rig, right? Another thing to think about too is um, I think both of my seats turn around. I know the passenger seat turns around. I'm not positive the driver's does, but it doesn't matter because here's what I know. In my previous rig, I only ever turned the seats around one time, and that's when I was having 5 people over for dinner in a space that was way too small to be doing that. And I've never turned them around in Henry, and I never will because it's a pain in the butt. Because the other thing that happens for most of us as solos is the area in the passenger footwell is storage. I don't ever carry a passenger. I carry a kid. He sits on the seat and he doesn't need the footwell, so I use it for storage. So if I were going to turn that seat around, then I'd have to move everything, turn it around, get his dog hair off of it. I mean, I do that periodically anyway, but every time I would want to turn it around. Plus, I store stuff behind the seat back, and I have another whole recliner in here, so I'm never turning those seats around. So that's something to think about as well. You know, would you turn the seats around? Is that going to be an important feature for you or not? If you choose to get something like a Class B van, it might be. If you choose a Class C that's got adequate seating, turning the seat around may not be, a big deal at all. The biggest deal, though, is to make sure you've got a comfortable place to sleep and a comfortable place to sit and work if you need to do that. And I'm very happy with all of the choices that I have made about that at this point. Does that mean that this is going to be the last rig or rig style that I ever get? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that. So far, I've owned a pop-up trailer. I've owned several bumper pull trailers. I've owned several Class C Class C RVs. And for the most part, Class C seems to be the right choice for me. So I'm curious. Let me know in the comments down below. First of all, hope you got something out of this. Let me know in the comments down below what you think is the best choice for you. And, as always, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, do the stuff. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.